Hello and welcome. It's Steve Rastall on the Podin Along podcast. I've got another guest with me today, Peter.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Peter. Rather than me do the intros, would you mind just saying a little bit about introduce yourself?
Okay, my name's Peter Mitchell, originally from Manchester, now live in Bolton, and I'm the managing director of MySign Limited. We are a digital signage company. We work exclusively for a large national AV company, and we have a fantastic system, and we work with some fantastic clients.
Very good. We've done a little bit of a chat before, haven't we?
Yes, yeah.
And we've got a bit of a thread we want to do today with our chat. And I think it's about challenges of business, the ups and downs of all that.
Yes, yeah.
And starting your own thing and going through that. But then reaching a point where you might think, well, do I retire? Do I stop? What's the end game? And how that looks? Because often that can be quite different, but I don't want to give the game away there.
No.
So if we can we just start a little bit about, well, how did you get to here?
Initially, at 16, like many years ago, left school and went straight as an apprentice as an electrical engineer within the national newspapers. I then worked 34 years within national newspapers. That was leading from being an electrical engineer to eventually working in electronics and computing. Very early on, I got into technology, I got into computers. So I've always had a passion for anything technological. Self-confessed geek, I always say that anything predominantly to do with AV, audio and visual, is what I've always loved. I have a passion for music, so obviously that was one of the driving forces. But through many factors, I got to the stage when I was 50, when most people would be thinking about slowing down. I decided to leave the industry because I thought I needed a little bit more control over what I was doing in life. Yeah. And so at 50, I left the industry and I set up my first business. Thinking it was going to be easy. No. First business, well, openly admit, failed miserably, but a great learning curve.
Because it's unusual. Everyone now thinks they get going in their 20s or 30s or 40s. My granddad started well into his 40s as well and had a level of success. What do you think? How do you think it helped or hindered starting late with your own thing?
I think one of the great helps was if I would have been in my 20s, you would probably be driven more by the financial side of things. Whereas because I was 50, I was quite stable within my relationship, stable within my life. And so I had more time. And obviously being a bit older, I feel that it was probably more mature to look at running a business. I know it didn't work the first time, but I think because being older, it allowed me rather than, I think one of the expressions I heard years ago was, don't chase the money. If you chase the money, then you won't get it. If you actually just chase the product, then the money will come naturally along afterwards.
Well, I love that. So when I was young, in my 20s, I worked for a really wealthy guy called Ronnie. He had houses all around Europe. I spent a lot of time and learned a lot off him, and he took me under his wing. And he said something to me that just immediately resonated when you said that, Peter. He said, you're like a ship. And if you put all the weight, all the money on the front of the ship, you put the bow under and it'll sink. He said, the money's in the wake. And it's exactly that. And I think when you're younger, maybe you don't get that. So you're maybe referring to you invest in the product, you want to do the right things, you're not looking at a quick buck, you're playing the long game. Is that?
Yes. My idea for running a tech company, running a signage company, because of my background, I knew to have full control meant you needed control over your service, you needed control over the content management, over the media players, the hardware, over the operating system. And that can be quite daunting because there's a lot of different skills needed to get those different things in place. But I thought if you can get a good team around you with those skills in different areas, that's the way I'll achieve it. But of course, it doesn't come overnight. And that's where the time it took, it's taken several years to get to this stage. Having said that, once the memento started and we started to get some good clients on board, that then gave us the revenue to reinvest into the business, which again I feel is a really big thing. One of the main things that we did was reinvest because I was always in a way chasing a better system because I knew if the system was better and it had more things it would do and we had more control, it would also mean we would have better clients and more clients. And so that reinvestment was, paid off.
You've got that loop, that
You've
virtuous
got that
circle.
loop,
Yeah.
yes.
And if you look at that and you think there's a strategic, what we're talking there is there's like a strategic piece that I guess to get all those things in place, other competitors might get the hardware here or do this or do that. Shortcut stuff is the things. And you're taking a strategic vision of we want everything, but it makes life harder. And how do you balance that? Because you've got to be practical that you're there to realize, which you have been, to get that end game where you've got all of that. But in the short term, you've still got to make money and bring that through. And there's always a compromise, I think, in building a business of that pragmatism of making it survive and the long-term vision.
Well, obviously the hardware, that was definitely a long game. So when it came to the hardware, then yes, you can buy off the shelf media player. And with a little bit of coding, you can make it work with your system. The original system we had was just sat on a server, very limited to what it can do, but it allowed us to grow to a certain level. So, of course, that we were doing shortcuts with the hardware, shortcuts with the operating system, but the end product was the content management to deliver the content onto the screens. As the business grew, then we said, right, let's invest into the operating system on the media players. And then as it grew again, let's invest into the actual media player itself and have them made in the Far East with our own operating system. And then as it grew again, we moved to AWS servers, which gives us the flexibility, whether you've got 1 or 1,000 or 10,000, it's flexible in that way.
Yeah, because I think what comes across strong there is you've got a vision, you've kept it, but now and again that path you've had to alter it a bit to get this. Well, we know we want it like that, but we'll do that now, and then you keep moving towards it. Because how do you feel on this one? Because I think a lot of people think, or it's sold, that you can start a business and in 3 or 5 years you can be out, you've made a fortune and you're done. And it does happen. Maybe it's going to be a bit harder in the next few years, all this venture fund to go. The world's changed.
Yes.
We don't need to explain how and why. But how do you feel about how long it actually takes to build something worthwhile?
I think when it comes to tech, the problem with technology is it's moving so fast. So you always have to be aware of your competition, what's out there. You always have to be aware on hardware. So there were certain things that maybe 5 years ago I would be thinking it would be great to have this, but at the time it's too expensive. Now then products have come down in price. So it means we can move into that area where the hardware, because obviously technology is moving, so the hardware will be available. So even now I'm looking at hardware that is too expensive now for to sell as a product, but I know within a couple of years it will have come down. But it is trying to get that balance, and that was always the tricky bit. I think my background, two things I said. The background that I have, being electronics and computing, was very good, and obviously building the team around you. And I've made sure we've got a really, really good team in different areas. So, for instance, one of the people who takes care of the operating system, he's a professor of Linux. So if he doesn't know what Linux is all about, then nobody will. When it comes to the development of the software, we have a very, very good relationship with the development company for that way, and they manage that side of it. And the same with the website and other parts of the business. So the team around you, it's not just about yourself, it's about building that team around you that you've always got.
Which takes time.
That can take time, and I'm still building that team. I'm still looking.
Because you can start false starts, or you can have something good that works well. The business is at one stage and then it's not quite a fit because things have moved on or they've moved on, and things are always evolving and changing, aren't they? Because I always remember the first one I started, and the first 18 months were brutal, as in didn't take a wage for that. Didn't get a customer for 4 or 5 months, the first 4 or 5 months. And it was just an absolute culture shock and sheer bloody mindedness, really, to see it through. And it worked.
Yes.
But, people would have looked and thought, he's wasting his time. He is barking right up the wrong tree. Have you ever had that, where you get the bloody naysayers and all this?
Yes, I will be the first to admit I have lost friends because of that, because I came from an industry where I did quite well in that industry, and people were chasing me, asking me if I wanted a job here, there and everywhere. I was still fixed on this idea of my business and what I wanted. And the amount of times that I did have people saying, you've had a go, Why don't you get into the real world now? And there's nothing worse when you're trying to get a business going, somebody saying, why don't you get in the real world? And I'm like, well, I am in the real world. I'm just looking at it slightly different than you are.
It doesn't get any more real, does it?
And it doesn't get any more real. It doesn't when you're not drawing any wages and your savings are going down because you're still having to. But if you've got belief in yourself, I think two things: belief in yourself and somebody else who has belief in you. And I was lucky that there was somebody who had belief in me, that realized it was going to not be easy, but they thought, right, I think this person could be really well. And that's the person we do all our work for now. Because he had belief in me. He thought, I don't fully understand what he's doing, but I believe in the person.
Yes, I think that's true. I had a bit the same. And I remember about 18 months in September, I was getting a bit browned off. And my wife, I took 2, 3 days off because I'd worked so hard and I was just browned off with it, going, oh, I've had enough. But I think it's an important point where she then, well, you'll be all right, and I was. Because people talk about resilience, and I think that's what we're really referring to. You got to grind on, haven't you, and see it through.
Yeah.
And how do you relate to this piece? So I'll just frame what I think resilience is, if I may. That resilience is a word people throw around, but is it not, when you get a setback, how long does it knock you down for? And how long do you take to get back to normal? And normal means I've had a really bad thing happen. I've had another bad day because I've had enough. Then the following day, you're back to what you do every day and you're being consistent again and you're still working towards your goal. And I think the longer you take the knock for, the less resilient you are, because we're all going to get knocks.
Yeah.
And you can't say, oh, I'm resilient, knocks never knock me, because maybe there's different levels to that. So how do you feel that, and what do you think people can learn from that? Because it sounds like you've had a bit of that.
Yeah. I will say that at one stage when we did present our, some of the ideas that we had, I was told there's lots of companies out there doing what you want to do. I would not bother about it if I was you. And at the time, it did hurt. It hurt when somebody who was in the AV industry, who was telling me that really not to bother. But then I thought to myself, you're in the sales side of things and I'm in the technical side. So you don't really fully understand what I'm trying to achieve. So it's now up to me to prove to you what I have.
Yeah.
And to be honest, within a couple of months, I had the opportunity, and it's some of it resilience or just bloody mindedness. Sometimes it can be that, and I think with anyone who's got a successful business, there is a certain amount of bloody mindedness, because if it was easy, everybody will be running their own business, but it isn't easy. And sometimes you have to have that mindset that I am going to do it no matter what, So, but the best thing to do was that lasted for about 2 or 3 hours when I got that knockback. The next day I got up and I thought, I will prove to you. I will prove to you.
Which is exactly what I maybe was saying, because you're a bounce backer.
Yes.
Not a bounce that knocked off your feet. Or, maybe it's a pretty rubbish way of explaining that.
No, yes.
But I think you know what I mean. So you've done that. You've had the hard yards. You've started later. Good experience there. Pros and cons to that, like with anything. Still hard. Trying to push it forward. Add the vision. Work towards the vision. How did the business get to that good place then? What were key things do you think that happened, or you did, that made it into something that wasn't just something that might get there, that did get there?
Well, some of it, I think everybody needs a little bit of good luck now and then. And I did get a little bit of good luck where I was introduced to an AV company who was local to me. That AV company half understood what I was getting at, didn't fully understand it, but said, we'll give you 6 months. And that was back in, the business was doing little bits and pieces. 2010 it was set up. 2013 moved in and I was given 6 months. And I've been there ever since, because it was within probably a couple of months, they thought, actually, if we support this business and help him a little bit, not financially, just support as in opening doors. Now, it's all right people saying, oh, well, you've had the right doors open. They can open the doors, but they can't push it wide open. You've still got to do your bit. So they can make an introduction to somebody, but you still have to do your bit, and you still have to sell yourself. And if you can't sell yourself, then obviously, how can you sell your business? And I've always been very, very, I think anyone who has their own business is passionate over it. And I'm certainly passionate over mine.
I think it sounds as if you plugged away, you've getting somewhere. And when the chances came, you grab them. And you're able to convert that. Because I know what you mean when you talk about, you open the door, but people don't do favours. I've had that where they'll give me a chance, but that's maybe a polite chance, but then they may be a surprise and they think, oh, this actually works for everybody. It's a good thing.
Yes.
So yeah, it's I know what you're saying there. It's luck, but I think it's that you work hard to make your luck, don't you?
Yes, yeah.
You stick in the game.
You've got to have a lucky break, but if you haven't got something to deliver, then it doesn't matter. Then all as it would have meant is it would have been a very, very short 6 months. I'm 20 by the end of 2013. I'd have been out on my ear. If I couldn't have proved that there was something there, then they wouldn't have allowed me to stay there. They're not in business just to pamper to people like me. They're in business. But he just saw something and he said, we'll just give you 6 months. And we have a fantastic relationship now. We get on really well together, and the pair of us are now driving the business to where we've got to now.
Yeah. So business has been successful. You've cracked on. You then get to a point where what comes next? So how's all that figured in?
You get to a stage where you think, well, I have achieved everything that I wanted. We'd achieved, and it just felt sometimes as if we were just adding clients and screens and everything to the system. I had a few ideas, but then I started thinking, everybody around me is retiring. So isn't it time I retire? And I did think about it and I looked at it. But last year I decided I needed maybe a little bit of time out to decide what my future was going to be. So I took a break. I went down to Australia and I visited my son. While we were over there, I had some good chats. And one of the things he said, you've always been you've always been a doer. You've never been one to sit still. But he said, you need to make the business work for you. So he says, go back, have a chat with the people and make the business work for you. Do the things that really you enjoy getting up for. The actual running of a business, like anything, the accounts and everything, they have to be done. They're not the fun part, particularly with technology. And that's what I did. And I thought to myself, could I see myself sat there either fishing or golfing? And I thought, no, that's not really for me. I still love technology, still love technology. Fortunate that I get to play with some really cool tech before it's actually out in the high street and out there for everyone else to see. And that's the buzz I've got again. So I make the business work for myself rather than going to work knowing that I have to go to work. I've made it work for me.
So it's interesting because I've had a similar thing different where I mentioned to you prior that, I came out of one thing, I've done two, this is my third. And I had a gap then, which was a retirement in a way, but I didn't call it that. And that didn't last too long, but I was only in my 40s. A lot of people have this dream, don't they, that they're going to build it, sell out one day, and sit on the beach. But I think it's like an idea, it's a concept. And when you almost get there, it isn't necessarily what you want, or you feel hollowed out that you go, well, what's now? What was all that for? Was that ever in your thinking, or did you get that might not be the best thing?
No, I did. Definitely. My intention was always to, set up a business, keep it for so many years, sell it, and then go on, like you say, go and lie on a beach or go and sit on a cruise ship for 6 months or something like that. And the nearer I got to it, the nearer I thought, well, I am sat on a cruise ship, but maybe only for a couple of weeks. And I am going on holidays and I'm doing this and I'm doing the other. So if you can balance it, and that's what I'm doing now, I've got my sort of life work balance. I'm still getting plenty of holidays. I'm still doing my cruises. I'm still doing my weekends away. So it's getting that balance right. But the idea of doing that full time was never really for me. I'm probably too active a mind. So I sort of think, well, if the time ever comes where physically or mentally I have to sort of have a look at that, then that's fair enough. While I'm still able to, then I think you've just got to carry on, because I think there's too many people. If you take your foot off the gas, then you just slow down. And I don't want to slow down. And I don't mean as in work, I mean as a person, I don't want to slow down, because ultimately you stop.
I don't know what you mean. And it's crossed my mind, because I think if you do that, you give up some of who you are at that point. And that's inevitable in the end, maybe to some degree. And we all have to get through that and make that work. But it's when do you want to do that? Because, you get in the car each morning, there's challenges, you still want to drive on, you're still you, aren't you? And I think it's a hard thing to explain, but that's how I feel about it, where once that's gone, it's gone, and I can't go and start again at a much later age, or I could, because you proved you can, but it'll get harder, do you know what I mean? Because I'm older than you were when you started. So why do you think it's like nobody gets that. Nobody talks about that. Everyone has this dream. We're sold the dream to sell. And there isn't a transition. Very few people, maybe they get there in the end. I don't know. I feel confused by that. Why do you think people struggle with this one?
I think because too many people, they struggle from an early age, myself included, where it's all about having the big house and the big car and the 3 holidays a week and retiring as soon as you can. And I understand when some people have that, if they're in a role that maybe they're not getting the full fulfillment out of. Because there are jobs out there where they can be quite mundane or physically. I mean, I couldn't do the job I used to do 20 years ago because physically I couldn't do it. You know, it's too demanding physically. So, and I do understand why some people want to retire and maybe need to retire. But I think it's slightly different when it's something that you enjoy. Because it is, I don't see it as, oh, I've got to get up and I've got to go to work. I'll get up in the morning and think, oh, right, I need to carry on with that. And how am I going to achieve this? And how am I going to do that? And I think if you get a buzz out of that, then whether it's, if you retire and you go on a golf course and you're playing golf every day and that gives you a buzz, you've got what you want out of life. If your buzz is getting up and deciding how you're going to do such and such a problem within tech or IT or any sort of business, if it's giving you a buzz, then it's a reason to live. It's a reason to carry on in that way. And I think that is very important to have a reason to get up in the morning. But even if it is just playing golf, that's what
I think you coined it well there, Peter, that it's that bit that, you know, it is who you are and your reasons for who you are and how you go there. I think it's balancing the energy though, isn't it, in business? When you're young, you maybe don't always know things, but I didn't know a lot, but I could work, and I work long time for years, you know, in that way, and you've probably seen that yourself. So, and as you get older, you've maybe got that experience, but like, how much energy can you give? And that comes down to your drive, your motivation, and whether you enjoy it the same. Because if you're up for it, you're up for it, and you find it. You know, your energy's up here really as much as anything, isn't it? So I think it's balancing that out. And do you feel the same about it now as you did? You know, because I've always felt in the different businesses I've gone, I've had different feelings about them, the different companies and the different stages they've been through, from grinding on and just the sheer satisfaction of making something work that's hard, to really good points, to points where it's a little bit flatter but making a lot of money but dealing with people problems and, you know, the boring bits, like the account and all that. And you think, well, I've got where I want, but you're going, oh, I didn't think it'd look like this. And then the exit of that and a bit of a high in money, but then you realise, oh, sorry, I'll fix that one out. I'm just going to loop back. All going really well, by the way.
Good.
Yeah. So I thought about, you know, money and these other things, and, you know, you want the high of that as you exit a business, and then you're thinking, oh, what now? And then it's a bit flat. But you realise it's not really always about the money. We all need it. So what do you think your motivations are deep down, and what motivations do entrepreneurs need and how they change over time? That's a long question there, but hopefully I've framed something you can run with.
Like I say, last year I was probably at the stage where I did feel as if it was just going in, drudging, you know, every day was the same, quite repetitive. And I think that's why, by changing the role that I sort of have within the business now to develop it, that's the impetus it's given me to, you know, to drive forward, because now my role is more about driving the business with new ideas, new things that we can do and all that. Like I say, everybody is different, and I do understand. I must admit, I do find a lot of people that work in tech, because they tend to be quite driven. They tend to have this analytical type of mind. I do have certain friends that are still working, that they're working in the high end of tech, because they still get that buzz, because they can't get rid. They're always thinking, right, okay, I've done this and I've done that. Now, how can I make that better? How could I do this better? And I think that's always that's where it can be difficult, and I do understand in other businesses. But obviously, I think I'm fortunate because my passion is my business, I think.
Yeah, I know that, where, you know, that becomes your identity and who you are, because I'm that, or was that, you know, in this. I think the other thing you may be referring to there is, it's like a man for all seasons, isn't it? Because we're talking really about adapting through that journey where, okay, I don't want to do the mundane. I now need to adapt, but I still want to carry on. So do I walk away because I don't want the mundane, or I find a way to make that work and I do the bits I want? And I think it's having that foresight to be able to see that coming and adjust to that and keep it on a line that still works here. I think that's what we're
Yeah.
seeing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because when you got your head down, sometimes you just can't see things.
I think sometimes you just need to maybe just walk away from a little bit. Like I say, I took a month out last year, and that month I was very much out of the business in that way. It was running itself. Everybody knew where I was and if they needed me in emergency. But it allowed me to sort of reflect on what I was doing and what I wanted out of life. And I think that month, I think sometimes you have to take that time off. So I think anybody who's in business needs to do that. And I certainly know the CEO of the AV company I work, he did something similar. And now he's back with a vengeance. You know, he took 6 months off for 12 months. He was doing what he wanted to do, but realised, actually, so he's come back now. The business is running itself. He's doing the things he's enjoying. And probably I took a bit of a leaf out of his book that I thought, well, he's making the business work for him, and I need to do the same. You have to be in a position, though, because I couldn't have done this 3 or 4 years ago, because maybe there wouldn't have been enough in the business to be able to put certain people around you to take care. Them jobs still need to be done. So they still need to be done. Once they can be done, then you can look at doing that. So it's getting that balance right. And sometimes it's knowing when you can actually do that. Sometimes you have to take one step back before you can take 2 steps forward.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to do. I had to take a step back and then go, right, okay, now we'll move forward with business.
Yeah, because that reflection time is giving the view to do it. But you've got to have the foundations there and ready to say, well, 2 steps back might mean I've got to invest in some people and these things that frees me up to do this or focus that way. I take that on board. So if we move to like a round out here for Peter, because I could look at this and think, I think I'm on a similar path myself, you know, as much as I might look at I started looking at cruises and I think, oh, I could get to do this or go on a camper or have this a house abroad and do all these things. But the reality is, after 2 or 3 weeks of it, I'd probably have itchy feet and be thinking, oh, I need to get busy with something. So what do you think's next? And how do you manage the stage then that you're in now? And how long do you think that'll go on for?
The decision to stay on after retirement, we said we'd look at a 3-year review. Obviously, not getting any younger. So I'm still, at the moment, everything's still very sharp. Well, not as sharp as it maybe was 20, 30 years ago, but still fairly sharp for my age in that way. And I think I'm sort of always assessing myself, seeing if there's any changes mentally. Because obviously, you know, and I've also got my family and my friends sort of keeping an eye and seeing whether if I look stressed out or anything. So very much the family around me are turning around and being supportive in that way. And they're saying, they're talking to me and they can see that I'm happy and that I'm not stressed out, because the last thing they want to do. And I think they will be honest enough. And I have told them, be honest with me. And if you think I'm getting stressed or I'm looking stressed or I'm getting snappy for any reason, maybe just pull me back and maybe I need to reevaluate. You know, I think I've got myself. I think I know myself whether I will be getting more stressed out. Yeah. Like I say, I feel as if when I came back last year, I got a second wind with the business. And I'm really enjoying driving the business to another level. I know there will come a time where I will have to bow out, because it will get to a stage where maybe others need to be involved to drive it even further. I might still have just, maybe if it's just 1 day a week, if it's just something to say, oh, I'll go in and just see how things are going. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, you know.
One last road trip.
One last little road trip or something like that. I think you have to just sort of evaluate year in and year out and just see how you have. I mean, obviously, a lot of the times I've said, when people say about retiring, I've said, the biggest factor with retiring is, you know yourself, your body will tell you why, whether it's physically or mentally. And I've still relatively good health physically and relatively good health mentally. And while you've got them, I'm going to carry on, you know, because if not, I don't want to take that foot off the gas. I really don't, because I think it worries me. If I do take the foot, you know, what will happen, you know, and I don't want to take that chance.
Yeah, because you think, I do understand that's a very honest thing to say. Because I think what you're referring to there is, you know, I was thinking the stress thing is a really interesting one. Because if you want longevity, you've got to play the long game. And you've got to stay in the race. So how do you stay in the race? By looking after yourself, not pushing things too hard. So knowing when you get stressed, is it having an effect on you? Trying to run the business in a way that maybe has to be different than it would have done. The stress you can put up in your 30s compared to your 50s or 60s is probably quite different. So it's then being adaptable again, isn't it, to say, how am I looking? Am I okay? Do I need to back off a bit? I do 4 days, or I do these things, I don't do that. I think some people can adapt. Some people just keep going the same way, and I've had a couple of friends who had that type of thing, and one sadly died. He just kept going up full throttle, life on the edge of that. There's other reasons for that, with his heart and whatever, predisposition. But I think you've got to think about those things. But the other way is not great either, I think, is what you're referring to, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
That just to stop, there's another deterioration maybe, and how quick do you want that?
Yeah. When it comes to stress, I can remember a long time ago, I read a book talking over, it was a general type of book. And when they talk, I mean, obviously, I think most people will know that when they talk about stress, there's two types of stress: there's the negative and the positive. Obviously, the negative is somebody saying to you, "Get this done now, or else you're up the road," type of thing, and that's where your hackles will be up, you'll be stressed out, you'll end up with a thumping headache because you're worried to death about getting that job done. The positive stress is the stress you give yourself, where you turn around and go, right, I've got this problem and I need to solve it. And it might be nothing to do with the business. It could just be at home where you've decided, right, I need to decorate this room. How am I going to do that? And that's the positive stress that you have. Now, that's good for you. I know positive stress is good for you because it's stress that's turning around and keeping your mind going. Now, that's the sort of stress I enjoy. That's the thing that I still get a buzz out of. There is a problem and I need to sort it. Because at the end of it, I don't turn around like with negative stress where I go, right, okay, that's done. At the end of it, I'll turn around and go, yes. And I think that's the thing. When you can turn around and you've done a job and you've been put under stress to do it, but it's a positive stress, and you go, yes, I've sorted it out. And funny enough, yesterday I had something similar. And I showed the client, and they came in and they went, brilliant, that, yes. And I felt good, and that was it. And I put myself under that stress to get the project sorted, and I absolutely loved it. A couple of hours tinkering away there, and then showed them, and the client went, brilliant, that, and I thought, yeah, and that's it.
You have to have a bit of stress, don't you? It's balance, or pressure, or call it what you would. Yes. These things sometimes get the wrong words, don't they? And there's a whole world around that now, of which I do understand. But sometimes people think you can have this gilt-edged life without any problems, without pressures, without these things, and you can't, in my view.
You'll get more problems then.
Down the road.
You say, you'll get more problems then, because if you don't have that, if you don't have certain pressures, you are, as a species, we are, we need certain pressures and certain things, and if we don't have them, then you'll just deteriorate very quickly.
Function.
Yes.
So if we're going to round out, got a lot of experience, how would you put all that together to help somebody else in snapshot bits of advice? Don't do this, do that, or whatever you think.
Be patient. Yeah, I think patience these days can be hard, because we do live in a very fast world. So asking people to be patient, can be difficult. But if you believe in what you're doing, then be patient. Be patient over it. Don't think you need to do it.
Well, that was the first one. Let's dig a bit deeper there, if we could. Do you mean the people today want a result too quick, or they just give up too easy, or it's just a case if something takes as much time as it takes, which they're all the same thing, yes. But the subtleties.
Yeah, I think you have to be patient. Like I say, when, the first business failed miserably, the second I had an idea, I knew exactly what I wanted. And I gave, with our business partner had at the time, we gave ourselves 12 months. So we said, we're not going to rush into it. We're going to spend 12 months getting a business plan, getting help and assistance where we could from the certain government funding that was going, but getting an exact idea of what we wanted, and then getting that ball rolling regarding getting the software sorted. But it was being patient. People were saying, when will it be ready, or when will this be ready? And I always say, I'll be ready when it's ready. I will do it as quick as I can. And I still have the same mantra now. I will not let anything go out until I am 100% happy that it's ready to go out. Some people don't like that. And I do find, because we do have, everybody wants everything yesterday. And sometimes it'd be a case of, oh yes, but we need it by the end of the week. So another week's not going to really hurt. So let's just be a little bit more patient, because then the last thing they want to do is put something out there that's going to fail and then make the business look bad. So be confident in your own mind that what you've let out there onto the big wide world is going to be okay. And people are going to say, yes, that's good. Not it's failed because you tried to do it too quickly. So,
And what else? What else do you think?
you've got to have good support around you. Try and avoid negativity around you, because that can be quite damaging. That can be quite damaging to yourself and to the business. So if you've got good support, they might not always fully understand what you're trying to achieve, but if they support you, then that's good. Like I've said, I was given 6 months, 2013, and the CEO didn't fully understand. He does now, but he didn't fully understand. He sort of had faith to say, I will give you 6 months.
Yeah, the negativity, it just zaps energy.
It's definitely.
If you had to put a third one now, and I'm chancing my luck here to drag another one out, third and final, Peter, what do you think has helped you flip at 50 and build a business and be successful, which in fairness to you, very few people do.
I think the idea that none of it's not going to change the world. What I'm doing, it's not going to change the world. But it's nice to think that you've added to it a little bit. Your product's added to a bit. There's people that are that are making a living because of what you're doing. So you're helping. So I suppose giving a little back in that way, into the pool of employees or employers and everything. It is tricky because, like I say, it isn't for everyone. It isn't for everyone, but I do know one or two others that have done that route, and they've probably all been as dog-minded as I have been. Maybe that's a generation thing, because I am quite dogmatic in that way. So, but it's no, really struggle to think of anything else. So,
well, fair enough.
Yes.
Well, thanks very much for coming in.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
Do you want to just plug the business just to end? So
the business is MySign Limited, and it's digital signage. We work with huge companies all around the UK. We've got about 8,000 screens out there with our system on. And a factor was given by one of the marketing team: you're never more than 10 miles away from a MySign screen. It's the sort of thing you don't see the site, you don't see who creates the content, who delivers the content. But we have a little map at work, and it's got all the different screens, and there's about 1,000 out there, all running the MySign system. So, yeah.
Well, thanks very much.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.
We'll wrap out there, and thanks from myself, Steve.
You.
Yep.